As I said, there are two problems. The first problem is with regard to the supply, the excess supply in the market. So we have to do things to increase sales. The only way excess supply can get absorbed in the market is by increasing sales. To increase sales, there are certain fiscal benefits that need to be provided. I would suggest 4 or 5 such things. The first thing which I think needs to be done is the interest benefit on housing loans. The limit up to which the interest is tax deductible has been 2 lakhs of rupees, 200,000 rupees. And this limit of 200,000 rupees was framed a few years ago. For the last 3 to 4 years, this limit has not got changed.
Okay.
In the middle, the government had come out with a special product where they said that there will be an additional tax deduction of 50,000 rupees, which would be available if a house is bought within a given period of time. I think it was 18 months or 24 months. And that resulted in a lot of sales happening in that period. But that period is also over. So today the limit is only 2 lakh rupees. In my view, this limit needs to be enhanced. We need to enhance it to either 3 lakhs or even 3,50,000 rupees, with the condition that this additional 1 lakh or 1,50,000 rupees benefit is given only if you buy a house within the next 24 months. So that would incentivize people who are sitting on the sideline not taking a decision to buy a house now. Higher sales will result in the stock of existing stock getting sold, getting reduced, and that will lead to more construction activity in the system. As construction activity increases, it will lead to more jobs in the economy, construction workers, masons, carpenters, plumbers, engineers, and so on and so forth, and that will lead to more income. Income will lead to more consumption, and consumption will lead to higher economic growth. So this is one benefit I would suggest for the sector. The second is the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana. I think is a fantastic scheme. There is a scheme called Credit Linked Subsidy Scheme. It's an excellent scheme, but there might be some modification that might be required in that. I think there are 2 modifications required. The first is that the scheme only covers certain areas. It doesn't cover every part of the country. Okay. So it needs to be made applicable to the entire country. Even pockets which are not covered should get covered by it. Okay. The second is this benefit of subsidies will not be available if someone already owns a house somewhere. It could be a native place where he owns a house, an ancestral property that he owns. But if he owns a property, he will not be eligible for this benefit. That needs to go away, because people do have ancestral property, do have one property located somewhere which are not really,
basically from second property on.
So so these are the 2 changes that are required. The third is with regard to rental property. Rental property, the income that is generated on a rented property is fully taxed. But at the same time, the expense that is incurred on a rented property, which really is the interest that is paid on a loan that is taken to buy the property, that interest is restricted in its deduction up to 200,000 rupees. That limit needs to be taken away. So that will incentivize more people to buy property with the idea of renting out that property, and will therefore increase sales. The fourth is with regard to stamp duty. Stamp duty rates in some states are still very high. And with the overwhelming majority that the government has now got, they can now influence some of these states to lower their stamp duty rates.
Okay.
So if these 4 or 5 things are done, then I think supply in the system can definitely control. Sales can increase, which will restrict the supply, or which will clear the supply. And then with regard to stuck projects, I would say there are 2 things that need to be done. The first is that the regulatory framework, that there is a reluctance on the part of people to lend money for stuck projects, and logically, because we have a strong regulatory environment where asset qualification installments have to be paid within given periods, otherwise the loan gets classified as a non-performing loan. You have to make provisioning, there's a high risk weight, and so on and so forth. So if the regulatory environment could be softened a little bit in order to encourage more players or more banks or more housing finance companies to lend money for these stuck projects. Okay. This is one thing. The second thing which could be done is a fund could be set up, maybe with a contribution from the government, like was done in the case of the NIFF. So you set up a fund. Let's say the government puts in a 2,000 crore contribution into that fund, or a 1,000 crore contribution into that fund, and then more money is raised from the private sector. And then that fund, that money which is collected in that fund, is used to revive some of these stuck real estate projects. In some of these projects, the amount of money you need to spend to revive these projects is not very much. But there is a reluctance to lend money. So once that little bit, 50 crores, 30 crores, 60 crores is given to that project, the project can take off, it can be completed, it can be sold, and the issue of stuck projects could be resolved.